Apple Gift Card is a practical gift that unlocks a world of entertainment and fun. You can send it via email or give a physical card to your loved ones. Your friends and family can spend it on their favorite Apple services, including Apple subscriptions. Apple Gift Card can be used to buy all things Apple. Products, accessories, apps, games, movies, TV shows, iCloud Plus, and more. Visit apple.com for details and to send Apple Gift Cards to your friends and family this holiday season.
Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
The holidays are a time to feel and create joy. And what could be more joyous than the look on her face as she unwraps a stunning new jewelry piece from Blue Nile? How about getting 50% off your purchase? Blue Nile offers premium quality, priced below traditional retail. Their online experts are available 24/7 to answer any questions and make sure you've picked the perfect gift. For a limited time, you can get 50% off at BlueNile.com. That's 50% off at BlueNile.com.
Welcome back to another episode of The Blue Turf. This is Thad Bell from the Blue Testament. With me, I have, as always, Erik Bergrud from Park University, Comets announcing team, many other things. I'm going to try to come up with something new to say about him every week, but I don't think I can do that. Anyway, welcome, Erik.
Glad to be here. How are you? How was your Christmas, Thad?
It was pretty good. I was going to ask you the same thing. I think you did get at least a Comets-related present, did you not?
It's mounted on my wall here in my office. It's a classic Hot Winter Nights pennant. So I apparently was very good at Christmas. Appreciated all the comments I got on social media, and now it has a home. So it's right underneath one of two Lucas Sosa framed jerseys that I have on my wall here.
That's pretty cool. I did not get a very Comets related. Well, I'm going to say it was semi-Comets related. I got a Ted Lasso board game.
Nice.
So I'm expecting, Ted Lasso to come back and help coach the Comets in a couple years when he's out of the Premier League. So
anything's possible.
Yeah, we've already seen him at the game. So, all right. Let's see. We don't have games to talk about this week, but we don't have past games to talk about. We have future games to talk about. Another double header, but at least it's not back-to-back days this time. First, they play Monterrey at home, and then they go on the road to play the Ambush, a very familiar team at this point. Monterrey is only 3 games into the season. I think 2 wins and a loss, if I remember correctly. And I've only watched a little bits of their games. What have you seen from them so far, Erik?
They're a good team. So for me, I came into the season thinking Monterrey and Chihuahua were the teams to challenge San Diego for the West. I still hold on to that, even though Mesquita's gotten off to a good start. If you recall, Thad, before COVID, let's call it the 2019-20 season, it looked like Monterrey was going to run away with the league, and then the season stopped, and so we never saw them hoist the Ron Newman Cup. And then COVID ensued. They took a couple years off. Some of their players played last season for Chihuahua. They brought in some old faces, some new faces. And what I mean by new faces to this league, but definitely not new faces when it comes to professional soccer. And so it's really interesting to see how this team is going to gel. and whether they have what it takes to run the West, whether it's in the regular season or in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was running down through that roster, just checking out the players a little bit, and it was player after player who are not new players by any means, but guys who've played in Liga MX, guys who've played for their national team, for their, in the Olympics. It's just talent after talent after talent on that team. It's amazing that any indoor team gets that much talent from that high of a level at this point, but it's going to be really difficult for the Comets to face them. I'm going to see like they're going to have to maybe use the youth and speed against them instead of the wily veteran moves.
Well, and it's a mix of players with significant indoor experience. Think like a Brian Aguiar as one example, Erik Tovar is another example. But I'm already looking ahead because Nick Vassos and I do a pregame spotlight each game, one player on each team to focus on. All right, where do you focus on if you're Monterrey? So for me, it's going to be Luis Angel Mendoza, whose nickname is Quick. And so you talk about players with Liga MX experience. He's played with Tigres. He's played with Cruz Azul. He's played with America. I mean, a lot of teams in Mexico and El Salvador. And 3 goals, 1 assist in those first 3 games that you mentioned, 1 first-star player of the game. And I think that he's somebody that you definitely want to watch for because he brings quality experience into the indoor game. But as you said, it's a mixture of a lot of talented players. And for the Comets, they only play 4 games against teams in the West. Didn't get the result they wanted at Mesquite. They absolutely have to get points against Monterrey, and then we can get into St. Louis, and I'll be like a broken record that the Comets need points on the road if they want to compete for the Eastern Championship.
Yeah, the Comets season has been basically front-loaded with games compared to a lot of these other teams. They've already played 6. By the end of this weekend, they'll have played 8. They'll have a third of their season done, and still missing players due to visa issues, which the last update was no word yet. That's kind of a familiar ring to that. So unless something changes in the next couple of days, they will still be shorthanded based upon some of those guys. They're also shorthanded with some injuries. I talked to Leo Gibson yesterday after practice, and they could be down to just 3 defenders going into this game with Monterrey.
So I was at scrimmage before Christmas, so practice scrimmage, and watching guys out there in different positions as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Leo has to do with his lineup. An interesting transition this year has been the resurgence of Adane Sinclair. He got brought in, I think, ostensibly to be an emergency target. He got moved to the back line when Leo started playing. We saw him with a great assist in that last home game. It'd be interesting to see how many minutes he winds up getting. But other guys, combination of speed you talked about, but there's some older players as well. And how do you manage minutes?
Yeah, that's Odane is he's such a wonderful, nice guy in person. On the field, he's a wee bit slower than some of the other guys. Still trying to be very nice here. And that's my main criticism of him is the speed. So hopefully the Monterrey players and Odane will match well for that, or at least in the Comets' favor. We'll have to see how that goes.
Well, the one thing, Odane's played this game for a long time. There are discrete differences between the indoor and the outdoor game. So experience can overcome a lot. And until they get healthy on the back line, I think that Leo is going to have to get creative, and that may be including minutes for himself in the back line. We saw Rion Marks come back last game. He's not 100%, but he intends to keep playing as long as he can. And so it's going to be interesting to see what Leo decides to do up front as well in the back line. And the midfield, I think, is probably going to have to be where some of the points come from. We saw Nacho score 2 goals in that last home game, which was kind of unusual for him. You don't expect him to be your leading goal scorer. Tetsane has been out that definitely hurts, but there are veterans on this team who are going to be expected to step up. And at least the scrimmage I went to, I can't speak for what you saw, Thad, but I saw people battling for time. I saw people battling for the coach's attention.
Oh, no doubt. I did not see a great deal of the practice yesterday, and I don't want to give away too much of what I did see because then I would tick Leo off. Because I saw a lot of the power play, penalty kill work at the end of practice. But I did see Dasani out there. So hopefully that means he's ready to return or close to being ready to return. I did see a lot of responsibility being given to the new guy, Chase Bromstead, which he seems to be, he still has a lot to learn about the indoor game, but he's got a lot of talent and athletic ability, and saw him come inches away from scoring a bike in practice. So let's see, trying to run down again. I'm not sure of all the injuries, but we know that Ray Lee has been out for a couple games.
Yeah,
Richard
I spoke
Smerman
with him on the field before the last home game, and basically what he told me is they don't want to rush him back. So I would look at him coming back in January, but not any sooner than that.
And then back to you'd mentioned Rion Marks earlier about how he's going to play as much as he can. I talked to him yesterday also, and it sounded a little bit more like it was almost day to day. Like one day he feels perfectly ready to play, the next day it's almost impossible for him to play with some sort of pain. So it could be we see him in one game and not in the other, or he could be ready for both or not ready for both. It's not making it easy on Leo.
I think what this means is Leo's playing more than he intended. That's the ultimate bottom line, is when he looks at available players, he has to look in the mirror and decide, okay, number 14, where am I going to put you today? Are you going to be playing target? Are you going to be playing backline? Are you going to be playing power play? Or are you going to be playing power play kill? How do I use you? And let's just hope that he doesn't have to play 6 attacker this season.
Or goalie.
That's it.
Yeah. And honestly, with shortage of defenders, I would probably like to see him on the back line because that experience and, that Monterrey players may not have as much of would really come into play, I think, in this game. And just have to rely on whoever he puts up top, if it's Rion or Da Silva or Felipe Abreu, just any of those guys who could end up on top. You're just going to have to rely on them. And like you said, the midfield will have to step up.
No, thanks for sure. And I think what to expect from Monterrey, I did catch the end of their overtime win at Chihuahua. This is a team that doesn't give up. This is a team that battles, and they're professionals on this team. Not to say that other teams don't have professionals, but combined experience on this team is pretty significant. And so they don't show a lot of fear of playing on the road. They may look back and want a different result at Mesquite, but Mesquite's been playing well. Mesquite beat them 2-1, first game of the season for both teams. But ever since then, Monterrey thrashed Tacoma there, and then got a well-deserved 2-point overtime victory at Chihuahua. And that's going to be a battle every time they play each other this year. And so I think this is a team that will be competing near the end of the playoffs.
No doubt. Looking a little forward to the ambush, New Year's Eve, 4:00 game, I think, 3 or 4 o'clock game for us. And it's another, 2-day turnaround. Hopefully, guys can get healthy and he'll have some extra guys by then. The ambush is, it's that familiar foe. How many times do you play them before animosities like rise if they haven't already? Which do you think is going to be the key matchups in that game, Erik?
I still don't think that's at the level of animosity that Kansas City Milwaukee is, and Kansas City Milwaukee have only played twice so far. But I hear what you say, Thad. I think there's a couple unknowns for St. Louis. We don't know Kevin Ellis's situation. I spoke with him on the field before that last game, and he was going to get more testing just to see what his prognosis is. So we'll see. He was hopeful to play on New Year's Eve, but a lot can happen in a short amount of time in terms of the body's ability to recover. I would expect another strong game from Paulo in goal. We've seen that constantly from them. They do have Stefan Mijatovic back. He was on a 1-game suspension for the game that was here in Kansas City, so he'll be back. And he's somebody who not only is a strong defender, but also can score from the back line. Speaking of scoring, we saw Cristo with a hat trick here. And so they seem to find players that fit into roles there. And for the Comets, I think it's getting off to a good start, but also playing a consistent third quarter. In recent games, not the one this season, but in previous games there at the Family Arena, it seems like Kansas City's gotten off to a big start, and then St. Louis comes back there at the end. And so for Kansas City, it's 4 quarters of consistent soccer. And as you said, it's not back to back, but it's 2 games in 3 days. And so there will be some tired players, and it's going to be incumbent upon the Comets to use that Friday to recuperate, and get mentally focused for the bus ride to St. Charles and what will be an important game, because St. Louis needs points. They have a tough stretch coming up too. And so I think every one of these games, you need to go on the road and figure we're getting something, which means minimum overtime, right? And if you're the home team, you don't want to give up that overtime, because you basically have split the 3 points one way or the other. One team's going to get 2, the other team's going to get 1. And so it's more of an issue of, we have to defend our turf if you're the home team. And if you're the road team, you need to be mentally prepared to come take something back, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, if the Comets do get a lead in that game, it's going to be key for them to manage the rest of that match. They've done well the last couple home games of keeping teams scoreless in the first half. I don't think they haven't been able to do that on the road. They haven't been able. I doubt that they will be able to do that against Monterrey, quite honestly. And especially if they are as shorthanded on defense as what they could be. Again, I don't want to say they are, because there's 2 or 3 players that could be back and could be ready. We'll have to see what shows up on the field. But just, they're going to have to be able to manage that, and that's going to take some smart coaching and smart play by all of the players, not just the veterans, but the younger guys who are out there. If they can get a lead, they're going to have to keep the ambush from having decent chances.
No, I think that's right. And in that game, it's critical to keep your composure, keep your head. And so I think there's this natural sense that it's a rivalry game, and so we have to be intense, and usually that benefits the home team rather than the visiting team. And so no stupid blue cards, no getting into it with fans, no getting into it with anybody. Just focus, do your job, and come back home. I mean, you have to think of it as a business trip rather than a war or a battle that you're getting into.
No, I think that's a good way to put it. Were you thinking John Sosa on all those 3 points that you made?
I didn't mention John Sosa at all. I mean, I think all I've said about John Sosa this year consistently, Thad, is he's been terrific on offense. He's got to manage his time too, because the expectations they have for him on offense, it's really difficult for him to be a 2-way player where he's can be as fleet of foot as a James Togba can be. And so that's ultimately his challenge too, is how do I put myself in a position to do the best for the team?
Well, I know you didn't mention Sosa in that. I'm just a little kidding, because if there's going to be anybody that draws a blue card or a yellow card for dissent, it would be he would probably be on the top of my list on the team at this point.
Well, I know some St. Louis fans who have decided that Nicolau Neto is target number 1 for their wrath. And so, I mean, for him too, it's how do I manage myself? How do I stay in the game and not let the circumstances around me dictate what I do and how I react to situations in the game?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, you mentioned Cristo earlier with the hat trick. It is interesting that all three of his goals came against the Comets.
Well, he was a quality player at St. Louis University, and I think they've taken a page not only out of the Comets playbook, but let's call it old Steamers, St. Louis Steamers playbook of how do you recruit your local college guys, keep people in town, and build a local team that way. And I think about him, I think about Otto Yahic, some others, where this used to be the St. Louis playbook is you would either go to a game in St. Louis or they'd come to your town, and you would expect this to represent St. Louis, not so much international flair, but more so the quality of the character of that city. And you see some of the players kind of in that tradition, but I think St. Louis got away from that for a while, and it looks like they're slowly evolving.
Yep,
as a franchise.
I grew up in St. Louis, and I actually played against some of those guys in youth soccer. I wasn't their quality level to be playing up at that, but so yeah, I recognize a couple of those names back in the 80s. Like, hey, I played against that guy when I was in middle school, sort of thing. So,
well, that's actually a good segue to a promotion the Comets have coming up in January. So January 21st, of course, against the Milwaukee Wave, it's going to be alumni and retro night. And so the Comets are going to do something a little bit different this year. It's not just going to be bringing back the Kansas City guys, but there's been intentional reach out to St. Louis and Wichita to bring back some of their stars of the past on the field. And so I have a vested interest that, because I'll probably be the one doing the on the field interviews of players. So I kind of am curious to see who all makes it, but I've heard some really interesting names being bandied about, and hopefully at one of our January episodes, we can talk about some of the names and what they did to soccer, or did for soccer. There was just so much quality that came out of St. Louis in the 1980s, and not everybody stayed in St. Louis, but if you think about what that city meant to soccer in America, it's huge. And I know that Kansas City has declared itself the soccer capital of America. And I think it's because St. Louis hasn't had the consistent professional support for soccer that Kansas City has had. Yes, there were great runs there with the Steamers and the original Ambush, but the St. Louis Stars in the North American Soccer League left there in the 70s. And so the return of a Major League Soccer team to St. Louis in 2023, that's after a long absence. And so St. Louis, in a way, has to reinvent itself as maybe an original soccer capital of America.
Yeah, that's and again, growing up in St. Louis area, soccer was so prevalent, and so there's so much history behind it. And you'd always hear about the 1950 World Cup, and half the team was made up from St. Louis, the other half was pretty much from the New York area. We never hear them claiming they were the soccer capital because of that, though. But they produced so many pros in indoor and outdoor. They did have a couple of pro teams since the old Stars. They had the AC St. Louis. It was in the NASL that only lasted, I think, 2 years, and then the Athletica, which was in the previous women's league before the NWSL. It was the WPS. There's been three big women's leagues, and it was in the previous one, and they had same owner, but it was kind of a ambulance chasing lawyer kind of guy who did not set those teams up for success. So they might have had more success if they'd had a better owner at that point, in some fairness. But nobody has stepped up to bring a team until just recently with St. Louis City, which, connecting some dots, we talked about the MLS draft last time, or MASL draft last time. St. Louis City took one of the Comets draft picks, John Klein III. They selected him in the draft, and so he will at least get a chance to go to play for an MLS team.
Well, we talked about that possibility on the last episode, Dad, and I think I added the caveat at the end. The Comets retain his MASL rights through December 1st of 2023. And so, yes, he'll have an opportunity to compete for a playing spot with St. Louis City. But if for any reason things don't work out, Comets have an option on him, or an opportunity to sign him in the coming year. And so I think for managing partner Brian Budzinski and the coaching staff, that was a calculated risk that they were willing to take.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile risk, and it could very well end up that he signs with, if he doesn't sign with the first team, he could sign with their second team and play for a year. And if that's not working out for him, that's a prime moment for the Comets to swoop in and say, hey, we'll guarantee you a good playing time, and see what happens.
Well, and I think that's right. And also, speaking of former St. Louis players, so his dad, John Klein, who's the current coach at Columbia College, he coached Nicolau Neto and Lacia Tetsane. Another one of those St. Louis products came to play here for the original Comets, and then went back to play for the St. Louis Storm. And so there are all sorts of these connections, either bloodline connections, previous indoor players and potential or current indoor players, as well as the St. Louis pipeline that somehow managed to exist over the generations.
Yeah, let's hope that connection would bring him here instead of the ambush. Well, he can't get the ambush until the draft rights would expire anyway. But let's hope we if again, I wish him well. If he makes it with St. Louis, well, I don't really wish them that much well, but I'm wishing him well in whatever he does.
So on that note, I saw a tweet right after that basically said St. Louis 1, Kansas City 0, and said there's no way that Klein's going to sign with the Comets. So St. Louis fans are trying to talk trash, regardless of whether it's indoor and outdoor. And I guess the banner is good for it, but ultimately it's on Klein to make the team and St. Louis to sign him to a contract. Right now, it's just a matter of two teams have drafted him, and we'll see what happens.
Also, there was a couple other Kansas City guys. There was a couple Kansas City guys that was not drafted. I'm hoping Budzinski's on the phone with those guys and seeing what could turn out with them too.
Well, I think there's opportunities. The advantage that the Comets have over a lot of teams in the league is they have a consistent and proven track record of signing local college players.
Yep.
I think that the draft in some ways levels the playing field for other teams who hadn't been doing this. I think the challenge for the Comets right now is a topic that you mentioned earlier on, is visas, right? And so the question is, as you look at college players, what is their visa status moving forward? And so you look at somebody like a John Klein or a Jacob Jones, who was drafted from Park in the 3rd round. And so they're American-born, American citizens, no problem. And so this may change the calculation, not just for Kansas City, but other teams who similarly have been recruiting international players from the local college ranks, as a league tries to get its visa situation kind of standardized all aboard. Is how do teams approach their college pipelines now? And we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that it will level the playing field a little bit. Those teams still don't have to sign those players. I mean, they can draft them and still ignore them. It's still up to them to find the players locally from their colleges that are worthwhile and can make it an indoor, because a guy, I mean, some players that will be not really super noticed sometimes in outdoor will be a very good indoor player, and vice versa. The different style of the game. So it's still incumbent upon them to find those players and work them into a team.
Well, but I took this stat, not only the college draft, but before that, the combine that was held in Mesquite in October, as the league basically sending a message that we need to draw younger players' attention, and we need to develop systematically across the league a pipeline for younger talent. And so I think the league said, we're going to put the structure in place. Can you force teams to sign players? No, but you can absolutely set expectations, develop a culture where all teams are expected to look toward the future. And ultimately, the teams that follow that advice will be the successful ones.
No, I agree. It's just even in like MLS, there will be teams who still take players from the draft, and there'll be teams who don't care anymore because they're more focused on signing international signings and, trades and guys with more experience. They just don't. And even with even in MLS academies, there's teams who don't pay as much attention to their academies. They don't put the money into it. And, there's just different ways to success for any team, for any sport. It's develop your own or use money to sign somebody else's in trades and such forth. So it will be interesting to see how MASL teams manage that going forward. But I think the biggest advantage for the Comets is the consistency. Budzinski's been around from the beginning. Technically he was away for a couple years, but Leo's been around from the beginning. So, and Stokic. So you have consistency within the team, and that always behooves them to look locally. That gives them the advantage to be looking locally and bringing guys along. There's quite a few players for the Comets who, I saw as a practice player, and then 2 years later they're signed, and then they play a tiny bit their first year, and the next year they're like, hey, these guys are really good. Well, they're not really good because they came out of nowhere. They're really good because they had time to practice with the team and then get some experience in their first year, and then they break out.
So that might be a good segue into what I see as a potential conundrum for MASL. You can look at it as both ways. You have markets like Kansas City and now St. Louis and apparently San Diego, where you have an MASL team in the same market as an MLS team, right? And so there's a competition for eyeballs, attention, season tickets, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, these MLS teams have academies and they don't sign all their players to pro contracts. And so you see somebody in Kansas City like Chase Bromstead, who worked his way up through the SKC Academy, signed to the Comets. And at least the day I was there, that I can't speak for when you were there, I saw a trialist with SKC Academy experience who looked really, really good. And so the fact that we're in cities like this where there develop pipelines and not everybody is going to be MLS for a variety of reasons, there is some advantage there in terms of talent acquisition that you might not see in other MASL markets.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And that's it. Budzinski and Leo will, I think, take advantage of that more and more as they go along, because there's been a lot of good players come out of Sporting Academy, and like you said, they don't all make the first team. Well, very few of them make the first team. Some of them make the second team. A lot of them go off to college and come back. And honestly, if they go off to college, I don't anticipate they'll ever make the first team, just because they've lost a couple years of the opportunity to have played with the top level pros. So those again are the guys who are primed to be looked at by the Comets and brought in and play for their hometown team.
I think a good example of this is somebody like Matt Lewis, who went through academy, 4 years at Fordham, came back, got a little bit of action in the SKC system, but ultimately wound up going on a different pathway, played outdoors with the Cosmos, played with the Comets, and now he's signed with Detroit City. It seems like that's going to be his permanent home. But ultimately, here you have somebody who was academy developed, 4-year college starter at a pretty significant D1 school that made a run in the Final Four. So there are players out there, and it's just a question of who's doing the scouting, who's maintaining the relationships, and how do you show the MASL as a viable alternative for somebody who wants to keep playing post 22 years old.
Well, and Ray Lee was the same. He was from Kansas City and was in the academy, went and played outdoor for quite a while, and decided to come home and play. So I think we'll see more and more of that. I would not be surprised at all to see Matt Lewis back in. I wish him as long an outdoor career as he wants and can do. But I could see him back in 2, 3, 4, 5 years and playing for the Comets, being one very tough ass defender.
Yep.
So, all right. Anything we missed that we should have talked about today, Erik? because we're running out of time here.
Well, unless you have any New Year's resolutions, I'm not sure what to say. I think you said it well that the Comets have a front-loaded schedule after this weekend, 1/3 of the way there. What I would caution fans is ultimately what you're trying to do is build towards the playoffs. I do think because of the factors the Comets are facing, it looks a lot harder to project that number 1 seed in the playoffs than maybe it did on our first podcast. But ultimately, you want to be playing well at the end of the season. And I will say it probably in every episode, you need to show that you can win on the road, because when it comes playoff time, you're in a home and a home plus an extra time game potentially, and you're going to have to win on the road one way or the other. And so that's the ultimate goal. Sure, mathematically, can you make it all the way through without winning on the road? Yeah, but it's not likely. And so the Comets need to build toward a team that can go into a Florida or go into Milwaukee come playoff time and not just steal 3 points, but absolutely earn the 3 points. And those steps, there's quality games this week. Monterrey is going to be a very tough match, and Kansas City hasn't shown consistently it can win at St. Louis. Win those two, and you send a message to the rest of the East and the MLS that you're a team to deal with.
Being a little bit of a realist here, if they win those 2 games, that would really, really send a message, because I know how shorthanded they will be to win those 2 games. That would be quite a feat. Obviously, I would like to see them win both games. That's much more fun to cover, and I am a fan of the team. But I just have a lot less. I don't see that that's going to probably happen just because of the situation with playing the 2 games and as shorthanded as they could potentially be. But it would be so much fun.
So that's why I'm here with that. I'm the sunny, optimistic, rosy half of this podcast who projects out. Just win.
Oh, sometimes you are the one who's throwing water on my happiness too. So it goes both ways there, Eric.
A little bit of balance.
Yeah. No, it's good. But that's why it's actually one of the reasons I like talking to you, is because you are a realist at a lot of times, and talk. I'm saying, well, they're hurt, and you're like, they got to play anyway. That's their problem.
Anyway, I mean, that said, I think this weekend we're going to see a couple interesting things. One, Monterrey is going to bring ownership group, and so it's going to be fun to see who all makes the trip up from Mexico here. But I understand that there should be a decent number of Comets fans making the journey to St. Louis too. So hopefully they'll be loud, and hopefully this will be 2 great games for fans, whether they're watching in person or catching it on Twitch or 38 The Spot. We look forward to calling Thursday's game.
All right. I'm hopefully going to add a little audio to the end of this podcast from talking to Leo after training. So I will edit that on at a later point. So I didn't want to ambush Erik with audio he hadn't heard. And let's see. Like I said, hopefully we'll add that on there before the end of the day when we get this posted. But as always, I appreciate you joining, Erik, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Thad, and to all Comets fans and everybody else across the soccer world listening to us every week.
I will most likely see you Thursday.
I will be there.
And we're out. When you have a little time off like this, do you work on anything specific for the other the teams you're going to play against, or are you still focused just mainly on your own team?
For the most part, we focus on us, our task, what we want to be better at, continuing to be sharp, have good quality, good energy. That's mostly our focus. Maybe a little % of the other teams, most especially if you have back-to-back. So, at the end of the day, when you have these 2 games, a day in between, there's good thing we've played St. Louis quite a few times, so that's helpful, right? But if it was any other team we haven't played, then that's a whole different challenge. But yeah, for the most part, we've been focusing on ourselves.
Like you said, you played the ambush a few times already. Monterrey, though, they've only played, I think, 3 games so far. What do you know about them, and is there anything you can really, scout them at this point?
They're a really good team and very experienced. Monterrey is kind of like Chihuahua last season. They started off slowly, and then the next thing you look, they started gelling, and they became a team to reckon with. So, it's good that we're playing them fresh into the season, but they're still a good team. Still trying to figure out how to play together, the transition game, but we think there are a lot of things that we can do good that will be to our advantage. We're going with the mentality. I mean, they are coming here because, they are in a position they want to win. They need wins right now. So regardless of them being the first year in the league, like I said, they just have great players. So it's going to be a challenge. But, thank God we're playing them at home. So that will be helpful for us.